Good afternoon, and welcome to day 27 of Business English 1. We are talking about presentation structure still, and we have talked about the introduction. In the introduction, remember there are 5 pieces, 5 parts, elements, whatever you want to call them. We have the greeting, the hook, the topic, the reason, and the overview. Remember, in the greeting, there are 3 pieces. The greeting itself, which can be very simple, just hello, good afternoon, your names, and your credentials. Okay, what sort of qualifies you to do this presentation? Why should the audience trust you? Okay, what gives you that credibility? Your credentials. So the greeting, 3 parts, your hook, topic, reason, and overview. We looked at some examples of introductory phrases and how to use them. Remember, on this graphic, the greeting and the hook are not here. Okay, it's from a different book. So you'd still have your greeting, your hook, but then they have the topic, the reason, and the overview. Topic, that's what you're talking about. The reason, that's why you're talking about it. And the overview, they use the same name there. Remember the reason. This is why your presentation is useful for the audience, what your audience will get from this, okay? Not why you're presenting it, but what it will do for your audience. And then we have the conclusion. This graphic shows the overview here. This is what you said in the overview. Then you have the body. That's your details, numbers, examples, statistics, all of the supporting evidence for your presentation. And then in the conclusion, remember you have a brief summary of all of your key points, and then a key point for all of those. Okay, so the summary is just sort of what the idea was. The key point is some important point, some key point, some critical information that the audience should remember. So, we've talked about the introduction. We've talked about the conclusion. What about the middle of your presentation? So let's look at it, the body of the presentation. When you're doing your presentation, it's important to connect the main points in your presentation, however many you have. Excuse me. Sort of a standard number we look at is 3 sections, 3 main ideas. You might have 4 or 5. You might only have 2, probably not for this presentation, but it's possible in a presentation to maybe only have like 2 main areas. 3, when we're doing presentations and talking about things, 3 is sort of like a magic number. But depending on how you have divided your presentation, you might have 4 or 5 sections. Okay, you might have the company history. You might do something on their products. You might do a SWOT analysis, and then you might talk about what they're doing for COVID-19. So that would be like 4 easy sections. When you're doing that, it's really important to use transition sentences to serve as sort of a bridge to connect your main ideas. We've talked a little bit before about transition words and phrases, especially when we were talking about the demonstration presentations. You know, some are very simple, just like first, next, then, later, after that, finally. Others are a little more complex, more of a phrase, you know, to begin with, or after that is finished, before you do this, okay, the next step. So you can have some transition phrases. What we want to look at today is transition sentences, which are a little more complex, but also really make your presentation sound more professional. Okay? Without those smooth transitions from one point to the next, your presentation will be choppy and hard to follow. Choppy is just sort of, it's not smooth. It doesn't flow. It just sort of jumps from one point to the next. Okay, like my camera, kind of choppy up and down. Okay, kind of jumping from one point instead of smoothly flowing from one point to the next. So how do you build that bridge? Well, we're going to look at a couple of different ways. In the first method, the first part of the bridge uses past tense verbs because it's already finished. Okay, so you're talking about something, and I'm just going to use point A, B, and C. Okay, that's really simple to remember. Say you finished talking about point A. You finished talking about it, so it's in the past. So that's past tense. You're going to talk about part B, so the second part of the bridge uses future tense, because that's what you're going to do next. You haven't done it yet. So we use past tense for part A, future tense for part B. So here you're doing your presentation, you're talking about point A here. Now we've finished talking about it. We want to go from point A over here to point B. So this is our transition sentence, the bridge here. So we've finished talking about A. So I finished talking about A. Now I'm going to talk about B. Okay? So past plus future. Past plus future. So let me remind you of the three little sample presentations, example presentations we've been looking at. Remember, you'd have the greeting, and then the hook, and then your topic. Okay? So we talked about three different ones here. Today I'll tell you about my trip to China. Today I'd like to tell you about my favorite season, and this afternoon I'm going to tell you why I decided to study finance and banking at university. So these are the three topics we were looking at. Okay, three different presentations and different colors here. So the blue one, the green one, and the orange one. And then for each of those we had a reason. This is why it's important to your audience. So if you're talking about your trip to China, you might say this information will be helpful if you decide to travel around China. Okay, so giving them something they can use in the future. So it would look something like this. If you're going to China, I've told you about the cheapest way to travel. That was point A. Next, I'm going to tell you about some famous sites there. I've told you about past tense. Next, I'm going to tell you future tense. Now, notice here we use forms of tell, told, and going to tell. Try not to do that. Try to use some different verbs here. Okay, but this gives you the basic idea. Or the one about my favorite season. I'm going to tell you about my favorite season. This will help you understand why I love spring so much. Then you talk about your first point. When you're finished with that, I have finished explaining why spring is my favorite season. That was point A. I have finished explaining. Next, I will explain some psychological effects of spring. So, I have finished, past tense. I will, future tense. And again, we use explain and explain here. Try not to do that, okay? I'm doing it here on purpose, just so you can easily see the difference between the past and the future tense. But you want more variety in your actual presentation. So maybe I have finished explaining why spring is my favorite season. Next, I will examine some psychological effects of spring. Or I will show you. I will illustrate. I will explore some psychological effects of spring. Okay? The third one, this afternoon I'm going to tell you why I decided to study finance and banking at university. After listening to my presentation, you'll understand more about what finance is and how it affects your life. Now, do you remember the grammatical error on this slide? There's an error here that I left after I saw it. This affects. Effects is a noun, spelled with an E. How it affects your life, we want a verb, so that should actually be spelled A-F-F-E-C-T-S. How it affects your life. Okay? So, past plus future. We've looked at the subjects that GFIBA students study. Now we will see exactly what bankers do. So we've looked at past tense. Now we will see future tense. So these are a little different. Looked at and now we'll see. They're related terms. But this is nice. It's a little variety. Instead of, don't say, we have seen the subjects, now we will see. That's, again, kind of boring. Or we've looked at, now we will look at exactly what bankers do. Again, try to get some variety here. Looked at and see, those are related terms. We've looked at the subjects that GFIBA students study. Now we will see exactly what bankers do. That's much better. Sounds much better to have different verbs here. Okay? Now, past plus future is one type of bridge. There's another type of bridge that uses a rhetorical question. Okay? What is a rhetorical question? That is a question that does not require an answer. An answer is not expected. The purpose of the rhetorical question is to get students to think for a moment, but they don't need to answer it. It just gives them a moment to pause and think, and then you continue your presentation. You may actually answer that question, you might not. Okay? So a rhetorical question is a question that doesn't need an answer. It's not expected. So, the second type of bridge here uses past tense plus a rhetorical question. So, back to the presentation about the trip to China. We've talked about some of the famous sites in China. Now, what dishes are really good to eat? So imagine we've talked about tourist places, museums, palaces, the Great Wall. We've talked about some of the famous sites in China. Now, what dishes are really good to eat? What kind of food do you like? Okay, or what kind of food is really good there? So we've talked about past tense. Now, what dishes are really good to eat? This is a question. Notice this is not just a yes or no question. It's not a yes or no question. It is an open-ended question, which means that the answer isn't just a simple yes or no, but the answer could be anything. Okay? Now, what dishes are really good to eat? Pause for just a moment. Let the audience think about it, but you don't need to wait for answers. Don't wait for them to start raising their hands and giving you all sorts of answers, okay? Because you're going to tell them. You're presenting the dishes that are good to eat. So you don't need the audience to actually answer this question. Second presentation about favorite season. I've explained some of the psychological effects of spring. So how about some activities that are good to do during this season? I've explained past tense. How about some activities that are good to do during this season? Rhetorical question. It's open-ended. Okay? It's not a yes or no question. And again, give the audience a second or two to think about it. What are some activities? And they can start thinking in their brains. Oh, swearing, hiking, camping, fishing, swimming, bicycling, outdoor activities would be very popular. But you don't need them to answer because you're doing the presentation. So you're going to answer those questions. I've shown you what bankers do, but how about the job market? I've shown you what bankers do. I have shown you, that is past tense. But how about the job market? Oh yeah, that's important, isn't it? Again, just give your audience a couple of seconds to think about it. But how about the job market? Ooh, yeah. If I study finance and banking, can I get a job? Is the job market good? Is the job market stable? Are there positions? How do they pay? Okay. What are the working conditions? Will I have a good work and life balance? So, past plus rhetorical question. So remember, there's a couple of different ways we can do this. Past plus future, past plus rhetorical question. And you don't have to do them in that order. You could do a rhetorical question first, or you could do future tense first. It doesn't matter. If you've got 3 or 4 parts in your presentation, or 4 or 5 parts, you'll have more than 2 transitions, so you can mix them up, okay? This handout here, how to use transitions, this doesn't have any questions for it to answer, but it shows some good examples of how to use transitions. This is from the original handout about using the introductions. It says, I've shown you my hometown. Next, I'm going to tell you about buying a ticket to get there. So, I've shown you, past tense. Next, I'm going to tell you, future tense. Or I've talked about sales results. Next, I will talk about profits. Past tense, future tense. Past and future. We've seen the problem of acid rain. Now let's look at the causes. Okay, so these you can see here are all past plus future. Past plus future. Here we have a statement, past tense statement plus a rhetorical question. I've shown you my hometown. That's the same. Okay. Now, how can you buy a ticket to get there? So instead of just saying, I'm going to tell you, future tense, we ask a question. Now, how can you buy a ticket to get there? Statement here. I've talked about sales results. That's the same, past tense. Instead of I'll talk about profits, but how about profits? Rhetorical question. Or the third one here. We've seen the problem of acid rain. Next, what causes acid rain? Question. Okay. So all of these they have the same topic here, showing the 2 different ways. Past plus future. Past, a past statement, plus a rhetorical question. All right, now let's listen again to the presentation and see what kind of transitions she uses, if she does. Does she use transitions? And if she does, what kind of transitions does she use?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ring Jang. To get started, I'd like to ask you a question. Which border between 2 countries is the most heavily militarized border in the world? You might think it is the border between Israel and the West Bank, but it is not. Actually, it is a demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. Today, I'd like to tell you why South Korea is an important focal point in the world. By the end of this presentation, you will have a much better understanding of this vital yet often overlooked country.
What are the 3 parts of her presentation? What are her main ideas? She's going to talk about Korea's geography, economy, and technology.
My talk will be divided into 3 parts. geographical location, economic strengths, and technological advances.
Notice how she kind of hesitates there. Those are hard to remember the way she says them. But it's much easier if you say, today I'm going to talk about 3 areas that make Korea valuable or that define Korea. I'll talk about its geography, economy, and technology. That just flows so much better.
Now let's begin.
Now, let's begin. A little transition there from the introduction into her main presentation. So, point A, geography.
Korea has a very significant geographic position. Korea lies strategically at the
Korea lies is positioned. Korea lies, that means it's positioned strategically. Strategically. She pronounces this a little oddly, strategically. She gets the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Strategically.
Korea has a very significant geographic position. Korea lies strategically at the center of Northeast Asia.
It's at the center of Northeast Asia.
This has meant Korea has long been considered very important by regional powers. Depending on how you look at it, Korea can be viewed as a gateway to Japan in the east and continental Asia in the west. Historically, Korea's location attracted the attention of bigger and more important powers like the Mongols, the Chinese, and the Japanese. This has resulted in a long and troublesome history. Today, South Korea is politically important because of its neighbor to the north.
Okay, so today Korea is important, politically important, because of North Korea. That obviously gets a lot of attention.
Every time North Korea starts saber rattling,
Every time North Korea starts saber rattling, a saber is like a sword. So if a saber is in its sheath, its holder, and you kind of shake it or hit it against something, saber rattling is sort of being threatening, creating some trouble, or causing some tension. So whenever North Korea starts saber rattling, okay, and again, she has a little trouble with the emphasis here, saber rattling, is again, kind of trying to cause some trouble, which it does every so often.
because of its neighbor to the north. Every time North Korea starts saber rattling, the world looks to the south to see how best North can be dealt with.
The world looks to the south, South Korea, to see how the north can be dealt with. She pronounces it like the word deal. You deal with something, but the past tense is dealt with, to see how they can be dealt with, not deal.
To see how best North can be dealt with. Tied very closely to the South's political importance is military significance. The South's military alliance with the U.S. acts as a counterbalance to North Korea's aggression and China's untested military might. This uneasy alliance has come to define relations between these countries. I've looked at the importance of Korea geographically. Now let's look at the country's economic strengths. I've looked at the importance of Korea geographically. Now let's look at the country's economic.
So do you hear the transition here? I've looked at
the importance of Korea geographically.
I've looked at geography. Now
let's look at the country's economic strengths.
Now let's look at the country's economic strengths. I've looked at the geography. Now let's look at the economy. Past plus future.
Countries. I've looked at the importance of Korea geographically. Now let's look at the country's economic strengths. In financial and commercial terms, Korea is a shining example of an economy that has made the transformation from international menu to post-international service-based economic superpower. You only need to see the power of the Kospi as a regional stock index to understand the importance of Korean finance. This also can be seen in foreign direct investment. In real terms, Korean institutions are the largest foreign investors in Vietnam and Cambodia, the second largest investors in Central Asia, and the third largest investors in China. All of this has helped to create a very large economy. This is remarkable given that at the cessation of fighting in 1953, the Republic of Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world.
She talks about the cessation of fighting, meaning the stopping, the end of fighting.
Fighting in 1953, remarkable given that at the cessation of fighting in 1953, the Republic of Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world and viewed as an international quagmire. Today, GDP exceeds 20,000 US dollars per capita.
Per capita means what? Per capita means per person. Per person.
And homegrown corporations like Samsung, LG, and Hyundai are synonymous with success. I've discussed Korea's economic importance, but how do the country's technological advances make it a vital international hub? I've discussed Korea's economic importance, but how do the country's technological advances make it a vital international hub? I've discussed Korea's economic importance.
I've discussed Korea's economic importance. I've discussed past tense.
But how do the country's technological advances make it a vital international hub?
But how do its technological advances make it an international hub? So here we have past tense plus a question, rhetorical question. Past tense.
I've discussed Korea's economic importance.
I've discussed Korea's economic importance.
But how do the country's technological advances make it a vital international hub?
But how does this make it, and how do its technological advances make it an international hub? Rhetorical question.
Today, Hyundai Motors is the sixth largest car manufacturer in the world. If Kia,
Gia, notice the spelling there is with a K. In English, Kia, that's a hard K sound. Now, if you're doing a presentation in English, I would use the English pronunciation. This is never in English. This will never be Gia. It will always be Kia because it's a hard K there. Okay? So just keep that in mind.
Is the sixth largest car manufacturer in the world. If Kia, a subsidiary of Hyundai,
Kia, a subsidiary. Kia is, or Hyundai is the parent company. Kia is a subsidiary. She has some trouble with some pronunciation here.
Is the sixth largest car manufacturer in the world. If Kia, a subsidiary of Hyundai, is included, then Hyundai Motors is on the cusp of ranking fourth in size and sales. Hyundai's success can be attributed to two key factors: engine research and development, and creating cheaper, more efficient manufacturing process. Combined, Hyundai was able to recast themselves.
They were able to recast themselves, sort of recreate themselves, reinvent themselves.
Hyundai was able to recast themselves as a leader in automotive production, design, and reliability. Hyundai is also the world's #1 manufacturer of ships.
Wait, what company are we talking about? Hyundai. Hyundai Motors, right? Let me go back to that.
Is included, then Motors is the 6th technological advances make it a vital international hub. Today, Hyundai Motors is the 6th largest car manufacturer in the world.
So who's she talking about? Hyundai Motors, right? Okay, now.
Hyundai is also the world's #1 manufacturer of ships in automotive production, design, and reliability. Hyundai is also the world's #1 manufacturer of ships.
Does Hyundai Motors build ships? No, they do not. Who builds these big ships with Hyundai on the side? Not Hyundai Motors. That's a different company. Ships are built by Hyundai Heavy Industries. Okay? Very different company. Separate company. Not the same. So be very careful in your presentations that you don't give false or inaccurate, incorrect information. Okay? Now, what else does she say here, though?
Hyundai is also the world's #1 manufacturer of ships.
They're the #1 manufacturer of ships. Is that true? I don't think so. No. They are definitely one of the leading companies. Perhaps at some point they have been #1. Obviously, this video is a few years old. But be very careful with claims like that. It's much easier and safer to say they're one of the world's leading shipbuilders. They're one of the top shipbuilding companies. If you say they are the #1, I will fact check you. Okay, I will double check that to see if it is correct.
Again, they have been able to redefine the manufacturing process. Hyundai was quick to understand that no two ships are the same. Each ship producer needs to meet the exact requirements of the owners. By creating a modular shipbuilding system, Hyundai has been able to mass produce many parts while meeting their clients' specific needs and wants. This has led to cheaper, high-quality ships. Finally, Korea is probably most famous for
Say that, probably. Probably. She does it, again, she gets the emphasis on the wrong part. Probably. It's pronounced probably. Probably.
Finally, Korea is probably most famous for electronics. At the heart
Electronics. Not electronics, but electronics. Probably most famous for electronics.
most famous for electronics. At the heart of this success is the semiconductor industry. Korea is home to 2 of the largest semiconductor companies in the world.
Okay, Korea is home to 2 of the largest. Okay, that's a safe thing to say.
Hynix and Samsung. Through extensive research and development, these companies have revolutionized electronics.
Electronics.
You cannot always see the Korean influence in a product, but the next time you open your Sony Vaio or Apple MacBook, know the chips powering those machines are from Samsung.
Again, American pronunciation, or I'll say English pronunciation is not Samsung, but Samsung. Samsung. English language presentation. English language pronunciation. Imagine you are presenting to an English-speaking audience. You want them to be able to understand you.
So the chips powering those machines are from Samsung. This has helped catapult Samsung to become the number one electronics company in the world.
Is Samsung the number one electronics company in the world? Again, I would question that. Are they one of the biggest? Sure. Are they one of the most successful? Absolutely. Are they the number one electronics company in the world? I don't think so. It depends on how you measure things. If you measure sales of cell phones, they probably have the highest volume of sales, but not the highest profit, okay, compared to Apple. And there are lots of electronics companies. Again, don't say things that you are not 100% certain of. So I would question that. And at the end of your presentation, I would go and look it up and make sure that was correct.
This has helped catapult Samsung to become the number one electronics company in the world. I've reached the end of my presentation.
I've reached the end of my presentation. Now what does she need to do? Summarize each of her main ideas with the key points. Okay?
Regarding South Korea's important role in the world.
Point 1.
First, I discussed Korea's geographical importance.
Geography.
Remember that it is located between large industrialized, political, and economic powerhouses.
Key point. Point 2. Geography, economy.
Second, I examined the strength of South Korea's economy.
Key point.
Do not forget that Korea plays a key role in Asia's financial markets.
Third point. We talked about geography, economy, now technology.
Finally, I looked at examples of South Korea's cutting-edge technology.
Key point.
Please keep in mind that this small country is at the forefront of the semiconductor and LCD industries.
Now, we've got all of our brief summary and our key points. Now, some concluding remarks. Just going to wrap everything up.
As you can see, for such a small country, Korea plays a crucial role internationally. Not too long ago, the Korean peninsula was left devastated by the Korean War. Since then, South Korea has transformed itself from a poor third world country to a vibrant star amongst the developed world. This is a feat most countries cannot claim, so the next time someone says, "Korea, where's that?" just say, "It's a shining example of Asia." Thank you. Now, if you have any questions, I'd like to take time to answer them. Thank you. Now, if you have any questions...
So, thank you. Okay, very quick, but that's important. Thank the audience, and then she invites questions.
I'd like to take time to answer them.
Okay, so overall, a really good presentation. Some problems with pronunciation, obviously. It requires a little fact-checking. Don't exaggerate. Don't say things just because they sound good, but say things because they're true and accurate. All right, so now let's go back to the PowerPoint here. So what's next? You already know this. You've already chosen your topic. You've been doing research, hopefully. Think about the purpose of your presentation. Okay, what will your audience get from this? Think about the reason. Okay, not your reason should not be, oh, we have to do a presentation for Business English 1. A reason what this will do for your audience. Okay, how will it help them? How will it benefit them? What will they gain from this? Okay, you guys have great topics. You're talking about great companies that are doing great things to help during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I think you can really use that to come up with a good purpose. What will your audience benefit from this? Even just the learning about what a company is doing and maybe how they can help as well. Maybe by supporting this company. Create your outline. Okay. You need your introduction, your greeting, the greeting itself, all of your names, and your credentials, a hook, your topic. This is very simple. The reason for your presentation and your overview, the preview. Okay. Then you make a little transition into your body. This is where you have your 3 or 4 main ideas. Remember to make transitions between them. Build those bridges with past plus future, or past plus a rhetorical question. Connect your ideas to make your presentation flow, and then when you get to your conclusion, summarize your main ideas. Think about what do you want the audience to remember. Okay, kind of your concluding statement here, and then, of course, thank them for listening to you. And, of course, don't forget to add visual aids to your presentation. Okay, so you've got this outline sheet, okay, this color-coded sheet I gave you here, where, your first idea is in green, so that's, in your overview, that is here, and in your summary, it's down here in green. Your second idea is orange. You need to include that in your overview, and again here in your summary and your key point. And then we have the blue one, that's the third idea, that's in your overview. And then, of course, in your summary, your conclusion, the summary, and the key point. Okay? I need each group to send me a complete outline. Not a script. I don't need every single word you're saying, but an outline of your presentation, okay? 1 page, okay? Oops. A 1-page, I can't type today, 1-page typed, I keep hitting the wrong button. A 1-page typed outline, okay? And I need this on the day that your presentations are due. So the same day that you upload, you should also send me your typed outline. Okay? Now, you should basically have this created already because you're presenting this week. Okay, remember this Thursday, you are presenting in class on Zoom. You will need to do your entire presentation from start to finish with a small audience in a breakout room, okay, with just 1 or 2 other groups listening to you. You will do your presentation, and then the other group will do their presentation, okay? Have your visual aids ready. You can do a screen share on Zoom, in your breakout room. Okay, so everybody can see your visuals. So don't forget, be prepared for that this Thursday. Okay, but this typed outline I need next week on the 25th when you do it. So you need your names. Don't worry about the group number. I haven't, for this semester, I haven't assigned group numbers because you're all doing them at the same time, not in any particular order. Think about your target audience. Who are you presenting this to? Obviously, you're presenting it live to your classmates, but if you want to choose a different audience, you can. Okay? So, let me take the last few minutes of class here and do a little practice. So, imagine that you were talking to some high school students who were planning to attend university, and they were they're thinking about coming to Inha University, but they haven't made a decision yet. They're looking at some different universities. They're trying to decide which universities to apply to, which ones they want to attend, and so they're considering Inha, and your job is to give them a presentation and get them to give them some things to think about to try to persuade them to come to Inha University. Okay. Now, if we were doing this in class, we would do a little brainstorming, come up with some positive points about Inha University, why people want to come here, and then I would have about 5 of you come up to the front of the classroom and actually do this little presentation. Obviously, I can't do that in a YouTube class, so I'm going to talk through what I would do, okay, and kind of explain it to you. So our target audience is high school students, and all of us, the 4 or 5 of us that are presenting this are Inha students. Okay, I'm going to imagine I'm an Inha student for this presentation, and obviously I'll be doing the entire thing. So we need our introduction. So we've got the greeting, the hook, the topic, the reason, and the overview. Okay. Now, I'm not doing a solo presentation. I'm going to be working with a team. So I'm John, obviously, and I'm going to be working with Adam, Brenda, and Charlie. Okay? So in the greeting, start off simple. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John, and my teammates today are Adam, Brenda, and Charlie. And we are students at Inha University in the Global Finance and Banking Department. Hook. You may have heard in high school that once you get to university, it's all fun and games. Parties and drinking and dating. Yes, there is some of that, but there's a lot more to university life than that. You will have to study and work hard, but if you have a good campus to attend, if you have a good university, you can also enjoy your university life. Today, we are going to show you why Inha University is a great choice for your future education. The information we share today will help you as you look at universities and try to make the best decision for your future about where to attend. Today, we'll be talking about 3 different areas, or 3 different facets, aspects of Inha University. We'll be talking about the ABCs of Inha. First of all, we'll be talking about access, A. And Adam will be talking about that. Next, Brenda will talk about books at Inha. And third, Charlie will talk about your choices at Inha. So let us begin with the ABCs of life at Inha University. Okay, so that would be my introduction. Okay, my greeting, my hook, topic, reason, and overview. Now I've finished my overview, and I want to introduce Adam to talk about access. Okay, so I just need a short transition here. So I might say something like, to get started, Adam will present to you about access at Inha University. So I've done a transition to introduce the next speaker and the next topic together. Okay? To get started, or next, now, Adam will talk about access at Inha University. So I'm introducing the topic and the speaker. Now, Adam should acknowledge me. We're a team, so he can just say a quick, thank you, John. And then he talks about access. So Adam talks about access at Inha University. He might talk about the subway system, how just a few meters from the front gate of Inha University, there's a subway line. And he could talk about the buses that come to both the front and back gates. And he could talk about Juwon Station on the other subway line, on the Incheon line, line 1. He could talk about how accessible the campus is for walking. Many universities in Korea are built on huge hills or almost mountains. So there's a lot of walking up and down. It's very tiring, maybe very dangerous in the winter, very physically demanding. But our campus here is relatively flat. There are a few small hills, but no mountains like a lot of campuses are built on. So it's very easy to access buildings and facilities. Okay? So after Adam talks about that, then Adam could say, Adam, I'll be Adam now. Adam says, I've explained to you how accessible the Inha University campus is. Next, Brenda will show you the books on campus, or we'll show you where to find books on campus, something like that. So a past plus future, okay? I've explained, now Brenda will show you, or Brenda will tell you about the books on campus. Then Brenda looks at Adam and says, thank you, Adam. We already know what the topic is. She's going to talk about books. So she can start immediately talking about the library. Okay? How big it is, how beautiful it is. She can talk about private study rooms and electronic facilities, how great it is to study there for exams. So she can talk about all the books on campus and the library and how great it is. Okay, I know a lot of students really love the library. Then Brenda says, I've explained to you, or I've shown you all about our beautiful library on campus where you can access thousands of books. But what kind of choices are there on campus? Okay, so we've gone from books to choices. Past tense, I've shown you where to get books, or I've explained our library to you where you can get books. Next, but what kind of choices are there? So we also want to include Charlie here. So we can say, but Charlie, what kind of choices? What can you tell us about the choices on campus? Okay, so we've got the access, the books, and the choices. Then Charlie says, oh, Brenda, it's a great question. What kind of choices do we have? And then Charlie could talk about maybe housing, how you can choose to live in the dormitory, or you can get maybe a little one room or a shared house near campus, or you can even commute if you're not too far away. Or he can talk about all of the dining choices, the student cafeteria, or in the dormitory, I believe there's another cafeteria. Also, especially around the back gate, all sorts of choices of coffee shops and Korean food and even some Western food and fast food. So there's a lot of choices for eating and drinking around campus. He can also talk about choices of clubs and activities that you can be involved in. Okay? So then Charlie finishes up with choices. Then Charlie says something like, I've shown you all of the choices that you can make on campus about housing and food and activities. Now, John will summarize our presentation. So he finishes up and then he turns it back to me. Then I say, thank you, Charlie, that was a great explanation. So I acknowledge him. I say, thank you, Charlie, that was a great explanation. Then I need to summarize everything. Okay? So then I say, today we have presented the ABCs of INHA. For A, Adam talked about access on campus. Don't forget that there are two subway lines. Line 1 at Juwon Station and also the yellow line. I can't remember. I don't remember the name of it right now. The other line at the front gate. Next, Brenda talked about books. At university, you obviously need a good access to books, and we have a fantastic library where you can read paper books as well as electronic. Finally, Charlie talked about some of the choices on campus. Remember that you can live in the dormitory or in a small apartment near campus, or you could even commute if it's not too far. And then you want to give some concluding statement. Talk about how important it is to choose the right university and a place where you can be successful academically as well as socially, and how important that is, and choosing the right major. And so you could talk to these high school students about just making the right decision, making the right choice, inviting them to come and visit the campus. Just some nice concluding statements, and then you'd say, thank you for listening to our presentation today. If you have any questions, we would be happy to answer them. Okay? So I wish I could do this live with you, with actual students, with somebody being Adam, Brenda, and Charlie, to actually do this. It would make it more interesting, but I hope that made sense. Just make sure you have all the pieces, okay? The greeting itself, names, credentials, hook, topic, reason, overview. Here, our topic, I made up a nice little ABC thing with access, books, and choices. Okay? And I was able to match the names Adam and Brenda and Charlie to make it easier to remember. Then you need a summary, brief lines. Books, don't forget that there's also study rooms where you can study alone or with your friends. And choices. You can choose where you're going to live during university. Okay? And don't forget these transitions, past plus future, past plus rhetorical question, to introduce the next topic as well as the next speaker. Okay? All right. That is it. And good luck on your presentations this week. I will see you on Thursday on Zoom live. Okay? Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.